So today we're recording this today. Four caskets were released by Hamas. Four dead Israeli hostages. Three of them from the Bibas family. One of them the youngest hostages that Hamas took on October 7th. A baby that was just 9 months old, Kfir Bibas. Tom, this whole spectacle today was just the most gruesome and shocking reminder of the depravity and evil, dare I say, of Hamas.
No, absolutely. It was a grotesque spectacle, a grotesque anti-Semitic spectacle. It was like a kind of orgy of anti-Semitism, effectively. The delighting in effect, the parading around of these dead Israeli hostages who were taken for no other reason than they were Israeli and they were Jews, fundamentally. We shouldn't mix words about that. The fact that these were the youngest hostages that were taken, the fact that they were ever taken in the first place, the fact that when they were taken, it was filmed and broadcast around the world for everyone to see. There's a grotesque, almost pornographic element to what Hamas did on October the 7th and since. And these awful little events, almost like somewhere between a kind of pep rally and a press conference, whenever hostages are released, dead or alive. In this instance, with the coffins being paraded, and other instances where you've got Israeli hostages holding up kind of goodie bags and certificates, something which maybe might fool a couple of the more credulous sort of Hamas apologists out there, but looks to everyone else, being filmed by balaclavaed Hamas videographers as the grotesque spectacle that it is. But many people, unfortunately, have come to the conclusion that the Bibas family, minus the father, who's actually been released alive a few weeks ago, were dead. The fact that this is something that people had kind of assumed by this point. It does underline the complete depravity of October the 7th in the first place, but also the depravity of the response across the West. I mean, images of baby Kafir's face were vandalised in the streets of Western capitals. People wrote colonizer on his face. There were various points in which people were making excuses for what took place. This is just taking of hostages in order to enter into negotiations. You're talking about a young family. And it's one of those things where I think it's because this conflict has been going on for so long, it's easy to become inured to what started it in the first place. You would hope, at least for the more honest people who aren't completely lost to all of the stuff that they've been reading on social media about this conflict in recent times, that it will be a point of reflection for them as to the excuses that have been made in some quarters for this group who've been parading around the coffins of babies over the last couple of days. This is who we were told were resistance fighters. Will there be that reassessment? Probably not, but it still needs marking, I think.
Yeah, Jacob, as Tom was alluding to, the reaction of the West is almost as depraved and as frightening as the atrocity itself. The fact that so many people make excuses for this, perhaps even celebrate this, is something that we really have to confront head on.
Well, it's in some ways is remarkable to think into the minds of Hamas at this moment, where you had, as you say, this kind of entire legion of people across the West doing the rounds of saying that Hamas is something akin to a national liberation movement, that maybe they might have gone a bit far in a couple of cases, but really this is born out of a kind of genuine and reasonable struggle. And then you see these images, this grotesque ceremony that really is far more redolent of the worst crimes of ISIS that were broadcast on social media than anything else. And the degree of kind of disconnection and fundamentalism and absolute terror to think that you could broadcast these kinds of images, ISIS-level images, the iconography of everything, the black suits, the chilling coffins, and for people to see this and still not be able to reckon with the fact that of what this is really, you want to sit someone down who spent the last few years defending the actions of Hamas, or at least saying it's understandable, or in some case a kind of natural reaction or something, and show them what the reality of it is, which is the like with ISIS, a death cult that celebrates the most brutal and horrifying actions, seemingly as an end in themselves, right? There's no sense in which what has gone on has improved the lives of Palestinians and has made us a genuine settlement or a peace or a two-state solution or whatever you like. No sense in which any of this has become closer. Instead, it was kind of celebrated, it was initiated and celebrated by Hamas, seemingly for no other reason than it gave them the opportunity to kill Jews. And that's what this ceremony in its brutality and horrific kind of iconography really makes plain for us to see.
Tom, anything on that?
Well, I think there's been a lot of discussion about how, regrettably, whilst Hamas were always bound to lose, or at least take more losses in the actual kind of physical war, that they had kind of won the information war amongst a lot of Western publics, that young people in particular, though not exclusively, had been kind of won over to the very filtered and censored version of events which was coming out of Gaza, for instance. And I take that point. At the same time, you do wonder, this is the same Hamas which is also pumping out propaganda like this. This is the same Hamas that was also GoProing and live streaming their rape and murder and defilement of innocent Jews, many of them peace activists. It's the sort of thing where if they have won this information war whilst doing all of that, it does say something about the people who've become quite receptive to it. I know that there's such a thing as people kind of filter out information that doesn't support their case and tend to try and downplay the worst successes of what Hamas does. But you also have to come back to the question of, maybe if there's a group that people are willing to make excuses for, whilst broadcasting its intentions to effectively wipe Israel off the map and murder as many Jews as it possibly can, whilst showing you video evidence of them doing so, delighting in doing so, taking, as I say, almost a kind of pornographic interest in broadcasting all of this to the world. If that's the group that you want to make excuses for, maybe you haven't just been hoodwinked, maybe you are just anti-Semitic. And that's one thing which has always been undergirding this. But I cannot comprehend how people can accept that, say, that spectacle in Gaza this week happened and not recognise the grand folly of not even supporting but even making excuses for the people who are putting it on.